Hello, welcome to Victory News. It's Tuesday, February the 11th, 2025. I'm Greg Stevens, along with Mike Garofalo, Fiora Hernandez. Tim Fox is out on assignment, but these are the stories that we're watching for you right now. 4 FEMA staffers were fired today for sending $59 million to lecturing New York City hotels for illegal immigrant housing. And President Trump is blasting judges for trying to block DOJ efforts to cut waste and fraud out of the federal government. Ahead, we'll ask former Congressman, Victory News contributor Lieutenant Colonel Allen West if these judges should be dictating to the executive branch. But first, let's go to Fiora Hernandez with our headlines. Fiora.
Thank you, Greg. An American who has been held in Russia since August of 2021 is now free and on his way home. Mark Fogel, a 66-year-old teacher from Pennsylvania, was arrested and found guilty on drug charges for possession of a half ounce of medical marijuana. In a statement, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said the exchange, quote, serves as a show of good faith from the Russians and a sign we are moving in the right direction to end the brutal and terrible war in Ukraine. Fogel had been living in Moscow since 2012. After a brief trial, he was sentenced to 14 years in a Russian prison. Fogel's release is the latest positive result of the Trump effect. Earlier today, the American flew out of Russian airspace with Trump envoy Steve Witkoff. Trump administration border czar Tom Homan said Monday he believed the Immigration and Customs Enforcement leaks that interrupted ICE raids were leaked from the inside.
We think it's coming from inside, and we know the first leak of Aurora is under current investigation. We think we identified that person under investigation right now. The California leak, Secretary Noem, she's correct. Some of the information we're receiving tends to lead toward the FBI.
Homan stressed the leaks gave the illegal immigrants a chance to avoid being taken into custody, and it was only a matter of time before ICE agents are ambushed, adding, quote, this is not a game. Homan emphasized the Department of Justice and Homeland Security were unified on criminal prosecution where the leaks were concerned. We are just hours away from a scheduled Senate vote on Director of National Intelligence nominee Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard cleared a procedural vote in the U.S. Senate on Monday night. The DNI position was created after the terror attack of 9/11 to oversee the United States government's 18 intelligence agencies. The vote is scheduled for 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A vote on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Donald Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary nominee, could also take place after Gabbard's vote. No more shiny new pennies. President Trump announced Monday that he is halting the production of new pennies due to their high manufacturing costs. He stated that each penny costs over 2 cents to produce, calling it a wasteful expense. With support from Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, his administration aims to cut unnecessary federal spending. In 2023, the U.S. Mint produced 4.5 billion pennies at a cost of $179 million. Efforts to eliminate the penny have been attempted in the past but never succeeded, despite public support for ending its production. Mike?
Donald Trump is betting a trade war will usher in the manufacturing revival that eluded his first term. According to the Washington Examiner, on Monday, Trump promised a resurgence of American manufacturing as he signed 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel, promising more levies were coming in the coming weeks.
This is the beginning of making America rich again.
White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett told the Examiner this. He thinks that it's not fair that we have trading partners that charge tariffs 2 or 3 times what we charge. And while economists are questioning whether Trump's actions will spur job growth, the president reportedly plans to be even more aggressive in his second term. Critics dislike tariffs because they cause other countries to respond in kind. China has already announced a 15% tariff on American coal and liquefied natural gas imports, as well as 10% on oil, agricultural machinery, and some cars. Senate Minority Leader Democrat Chuck Schumer was mocked across social media on Monday. It happened after he announced a government tip line to report corruption, abuse of power, or threats to public safety. The 74-year-old was blasted with scathing comments on social media, calling out Democrats for wasteful spending and abuse of power. Fox News reported John Paul McIsaac, Hunter Biden's laptop repairman from Delaware, posted this on X: "I'm reporting you After I went to Congress trying to warn you about the laptop, you turned around and demanded the FBI warn Congress of foreign interference. Lying or providing false information to the FBI is a crime. FBI whistleblower Garrett O'Boyle posted this. Hey, Chuck. I've been indefinitely suspended without pay for over 29 months now because of whistleblower retaliation from the FBI. Why haven't you cared about whistleblowers and whistleblower protection until now? U.S. think tank Middle East Forum early this month published the findings of a multi-year report that contained some startling information. The report analyzed work done by the United States Agency for International Development and found funding to extremist groups tied to designated terrorist organizations. In one case, funding was distributed just days before the Hamas attack against Israel on October 7th of 2023. Listen to what Sam Westrop had to say in April of 2020 about some research the forum had done.
We regularly monitor a very prominent database the government runs called usaspending.gov. You can visit it yourself if you want. And as part of our other work, we've found at least $40 million worth of grants of federal money going to Islamist groups over the last decade.
The report published in early February reveals $164 million of approved grants to radical organizations, with at least $122 million of U.S. taxpayer dollars going to groups aligned with designated terrorists and their supporters. They also found USAID gave more than $900,000 to a Gaza-based terror charity starting in 2016 and days before the October 7th attack. Greg.
Thank you, Mike. 4 employees of the Federal Emergency Management Agency were fired today. According to Fox News, the Department of Homeland Security says the workers were let go for sending $59 million to luxury hotels in New York City last week to cover housing costs for illegal immigrants. According to Fox News, a statement from DHS says the FEMA employees fired included the chief financial officer, 2 program analysts, and a grant specialist. The head of the Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk, posted this about the $50 million fine on Monday. That money is meant for American disaster relief and instead is being spent on high-end hotels for illegals. Musk also pointed under Biden, FEMA took money away from the Americans in need of disaster relief and spent it on 5-star hotels for illegals, to quote him, pure evil. Joining us now is the host of the Steadfast and Loyal podcast, former Congressman, Victory News contributor, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Sir, welcome to Victory News.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Greg. Thank you.
All right. So in addition to the 4 FEMA firings, USAID is also under heavy fire from the administration and DOJ. Let's go back to April of 2023. I want you to listen to now ex-USAID Chief Samantha Powers with this announcement.
We've actually just launched something called Reporter Shield, which is an insurance fund for journalists doing work that is politically perilous. And journalists will be able to buy in. It's basically a global public good because it's in everybody's interest, as we've discussed.
That's Samantha Power speaking. Colonel West, this is the former leader of USAID whose personal net worth has soared from $6.7 million to $30 million. Now, wait, she earns $180,000 a year. She literally lined up that insurance program to embolden journalists to report the misinformation globally. Just how rotten is USAID?
Well, and let's not forget that Samantha Power also held a position in the Obama administration. I believe that she was the representative to the United Nations. So this is that self-licking ice cream cone that we know is Washington, D.C. And of course, when you look at the enrichment of these individuals at the expense of the government, the American taxpayer, it is repulsive. USAID, without a doubt, has been a slush fund. It's been a money laundering scheme for progressive socialist, Marxist designs, ideological causes that they want to see furthered and pushed throughout the entire globe. And it should be very troubling that we have an organization that was actually funding a terrorist organization like Hamas. And now when someone comes around like a President Trump saying that maybe we can use this for the betterment of the people in Gaza and develop that real estate, now the left is acting once again all indignant and things of this nature, because they don't want to see this slush fund cut off. And we are going to find many more things that are going to be quite troubling about the finances of the American taxpayer.
Self-licking ice cream cone, I'll never look at it the same. They want to keep all the ice cream for themselves. President Trump has put a deadline on Hamas to release all hostages or suffer the consequences. Here he is.
I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
All right, Colonel, let me ask you this. Will Hamas respond? And if not, what kind of repercussions could happen if Hamas ignores Trump's deadline?
I think that you will see old-style siege warfare. We just cut them off and we just bleed them down to death, literally and figuratively. The people there in Gaza, for whatever reason, have supported an Islamic terrorist organization as their governing authority. And when you looked at those last 3 hostages that were released by Hamas after they were paraded through Hamas fighters and Gazans, where they were jeered, and it reminded me of the Holocaust. Those individuals, were emaciated. And so I think that this is a very bad optic for Hamas. It's time we stop playing around legitimizing a terrorist organization and understand there's only one thing we can do. We have to decimate them.
All right, squad member Ayanna Presley, she offered her version of a olive branch to Republicans today. Here it is.
We are all willing to work with anyone who's serious about doing the work of censoring the American people and advancing progress.
So, Colonel, is she talking to the conservative side of the aisle when she calls for serious censorship?
I have no idea who she's talking to, but she reminds me of the Guardians there in the movie Black Panther, and I do not give her any credibility whatsoever. She's a disgrace.
Colonel, thank you again. We'll see you in just a minute.
My pleasure.
Mike?
Greg, if you think spending tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money each year on food and housing for illegal immigrants isn't bad, you got to listen to this. According to the Washington Times, a Biden administration program added $128 million a year in legal aid costs for deportation hearings. The wasted millions of dollars was exposed by Circe Owen, who took over at the Immigration Review Office when Donald Trump started his second term. New Trump administration Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on Monday visited parts of Tennessee and North Carolina along Interstate 40 damaged by Hurricane Helene and neglected by the Biden administration.
We're out here assessing and looking at how we can partner with local officials to rebuild quickly. And Donald Trump, he doesn't move at the speed of prior administrations. He moves lightning quick. So we want to go fast, we want to go cheap, and we want to go safe.
The Transportation Department is reportedly using a new approach to speed up repairs by acquiring construction materials locally. The federal government is partnering with the U.S. Forest Service to extract materials from public land. Those specifics were not disclosed. The damaged interstate, which previously served 24,000 vehicles a day, is expected to reopen with one lane at least in each direction by March 1st. Fior.
Mike, President Donald Trump pardoned former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich on Monday.
I want to express our deepest and most profound and everlasting gratitude to President Trump for what he's done today, for the full presidential pardon. I think about my relationship with President Trump, and it's really, well, he's always doing things for me, and he never asked me to do anything for him.
Blagojevich was convicted in 2011 of corruption, including attempting to sell Illinois' U.S. Senate seat once held by former President Barack Obama. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison, but in 2020, during his first term, Donald Trump commuted his sentence, which led to his release from prison. The difference between a pardon and a commuted sentence is a pardon removes a conviction from one's record, while a commutation keeps the conviction but ends the punishment. New York Democrat Governor Kathy Hochul has reportedly chosen not to support a plan by state lawmakers to rewrite special election rules and leave a House seat vacant until November. The New York Post reported the state's Democrat-controlled legislature moved on Monday to leave UN Ambassador-designate Elise Stefanik's congressional seat open until the fall. A move like that would leave the Republican-controlled House of Representatives with a slim 2-seat majority for months. Reportedly, Hochul requested requested the legislature to postpone any action on the bill while she continues discussions with the president over a controversial Manhattan toll. Senate Republican Minority Leader Robert Ortt said the fact that Democrats even attempted this sham is proof of how corrupt and desperate the Albany swamp has become. According to the Post, Hochul viewed the bill as a leverage in her talks with Trump. Greg.
The Trump administration's plan requiring government workers to return to the office or accept a buyout has been temporarily blocked. According to Fox News, federal judge George O'Toole, a Clinton appointee, has paused the Trump administration's plan, which had pushed back deadline of 11:59 p.m. on Monday night. Of the 2 million federal workers, more than 1.8 million don't work full-time in the office, leaving buildings mostly empty. So far, 65,000 have reportedly accepted buyouts, but 90% intend to return to work. The challenge to the Trump buyout plan for executive branch workers was filed last week by 20 Democrat attorneys general and the American Federation of Government Employees, as well as others. A United States district judge from Rhode Island on Monday ordered the Trump administration to fully comply with a previous order to lift its broad freeze on federal spending. The decision was handed down after a group of Democratic state attorneys generals claimed that some funds, well, they remained frozen. Reuters reports U.S. District Judge John McConnell ruled all funding must be restored until he can hold a hearing on the state's motion for a longer-term order. The Trump administration had previously told the states the order did not apply to certain environmental and infrastructure spending and that some payments were delayed for, quote, operational and administrative reasons. According to The Hill, the judge said among the funds to be restored are those that are part of two massive spending laws signed by Joe Biden, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. McConnell went on to call the freeze on federally funds likely unconstitutional. Mike?
Greg, during his flight from South Florida to the Super Bowl in New Orleans on Sunday, Donald Trump blasted the judges who blocked the Department of Government Efficiency's review looking to reduce fraud and waste across the federal government.
Hey, you're not allowed to look for theft and fraud, etc. Then we don't have much of a country. So no judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
In a petition filed late on Sunday to vacate the injunction, the Trump administration legal team wrote this: there is no sound reason that it should extend to Treasury's leadership, who are charged with overseeing and administering the department without interruption. To the extent the order applies to senior political appointees at Treasury, it is an extraordinary and unprecedented judicial interference with a cabinet secretary's ability to oversee the department he was constitutionally appointed to lead. Once again, let's talk with Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Sir, since the Democrats cannot win public opinion in their opposition of Donald Trump's pursuit of government waste, is they're engaging the judiciary the way they believe Trump can be crippled in his goal?
Well, the thing we have to understand is the Democrats do not believe in the three branches of government, the legislative, executive, and judicial. They believe in three branches of rule. That is media, academia, and the courts. And so they're always going to run to the courts to implement their ideological agenda. The very first sentence in Article 2 of the Constitution, which is the framework for the executive branch, is all executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States. The President of the United States is the chief executive officer of the executive branch. That means all of those agencies, all of those employees. For the members of the judiciary to jump over and tell the President of the United States of America how he operates the executive branch is unconstitutional. They're supposed to interpret the law. They're not supposed to bend to the whims of government employee unions, which, again, I don't think that's constitutional because they're collectively bargaining with the American taxpayer dollar.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Now, listen to Caitlin Collins at CNN float what sounds like a new Democrat talking point.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks. And tonight, there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. The Trump Justice Department says the president should have the authority to decide how to run the government and that these judges are overreaching. And some of the president's allies say the judges should not be judging any of the moves to shrink the federal government.
So, Colonel, do you think we just heard the latest phrase offered from the DNC, constitutional crisis, for the media to attack Donald Trump?
Yes, but the sad thing is the hypocrisy is laughable. Where were they talking about a constitutional crisis when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris disavowed Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, known as the Guarantee Clause, saying that the federal government shall guarantee to every state in the union to protect them from invasion. 10, 11, 12 million illegal immigrants, to include gang members and terrorists, flowed across our border. We can continue to hear that the border was secure. I did not hear any Democrat, Ayanna Pressley, Chuck Schumer, anyone, Caitlin Collins, talking about the unconstitutional activities there, or to say that they're going to relieve college student loan debt, which the Supreme Court, in looking at that, said that the president does not have the ability to do so. Even Nancy Pelosi said that, because that's a power under Article 1 of the Constitution, the legislative branch. So for the Democrats to talk about a constitutional crisis, this is laughable.
You know, Colonel, MSNBC host Rachel Maddow reacted to Tulsi Gabbard advancing to a full Senate vote for her nomination to become the next director of national intelligence.
All Republicans in the Senate voted tonight to advance the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard to be Director of National Intelligence. It's like saying that I could be a defensive lineman on the Philadelphia Eagles. Sure.
Defensive lineman. Colonel, your reaction to Maddow's deep and incisive commentary of a former member of Congress and lieutenant colonel becoming Director of National Intelligence?
Pretty empty, because for the left, it's not about qualifications, it's about ideology. And Tulsi Gabbard, the reason why they hate her so viciously is that she was once one of them. When she was on their side, she was fine. She was, you know, a leading member of the DNC, ran for president. Now she saw the light, and she has come to the other side. She has embraced constitutional conservatism. She's a big threat. So Rachel Maddow, who is losing in ratings, her commentary, again, it just falls short.
You know, Colonel, American Mark Fogel, who was sentenced to a Russian prison for 14 years, is returning to the United States right now. President Trump gave up no high-value Russian spy, weapons experts in return. What's the difference between this administration and the Biden administration negotiating this kind of release?
Is strength and weakness. Is, you know, operating from a position of a moral high ground. It is, you know, being able to look at someone and have that resolute look instead of someone that is falling asleep at, you know, meetings and things of this nature. So once again, we have strength. We have someone that will stand for the United States of America, and other global leaders see that.
Colonel, thank you for that. We're going to see you back here in a couple minutes.
Yes, sir.
If you are.
Mike, President Trump hosted King Abdullah of Jordan at the White House today. Among the topics brought up, the future of the Gaza Strip and Palestinian people.
I think the point is how do we make this work in a way that is good for everybody? Right. Obviously, we have to look at the best interests of the United States, of the people in the region, especially to my people of Jordan. And we're going to have some interesting discussions today. I think one of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible, and then wait for, I think, the Egyptians to present their plan on how we can work with the president to work on Gaza challenges.
Further discussions about the war-torn zone and its people are expected to take place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, at a date yet to be announced. With the latest from Israel and Hamas's delay of hostage release, here's ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
After hearing of Hamas's decision to delay the next hostage release, U.S. President Donald Trump said that all hostages must be released by noon Saturday, or Israel should cancel the deal and let all hell break loose. Trump said it's an Israeli decision, but if it were up to him, Hamas must keep the deadline or the war would renew. Earlier, Trump expanded on his plan for the U.S. to own Gaza. Speaking to Fox, Trump insisted that he would build beautiful and safe communities for Gazan residents outside the Gaza Strip. The president insisted that Egypt and Jordan would agree to absorb Gazans because they receive a great deal of aid from the U.S. Hamas blamed so-called Israeli violations, even though Israel carried out all of its obligations. Defense Minister Katz called the Hamas move a complete violation of the ceasefire agreement and ordered the army to be on alert for any development. The Palestinian Authority has signed a decree canceling the notorious legislation that provided payments to convicted Palestinian terrorists serving terms in Israeli prisons. The so-called pay-to-slay system provided payments to prisoners based on the length of their sentences. They also make payments to the families of terrorists killed while carrying out attacks on Israelis. This is Steve Leibowitz for ILTV and Victory News.
Today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu echoed the words of President Donald Trump, return hostages at noon Saturday or war resumes. Greg?
President Donald Trump said on Monday Palestinians would not have an automatic right to return to Gaza as plans evolve for his redevelopment of the war-torn area.
Think of it as a real estate development for the future. It would be a beautiful piece of land.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better. In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them, because if they have to return now, it'll be years before you could ever. It's not habitable.
Much of Gaza was reduced to rubble after Hamas terrorists attacked Israel on October the 7th of 2023, and Israeli Defense Forces vowed to eliminate the terror organization. Trump added it would be great if we could make a deal with Jordan or Egypt, since we give them billions and billions of dollars a year. And who knows, that may be happening right now. Before we go, let's talk with Victory News contributor Colonel Allen West one last time. So, Colonel, how is President doing handling what's already been an explosive situation in the Gaza Strip?
Well, once again, he's handling it from a position of strength. He's presenting viable alternatives, economic opportunity, instead of continuing on with the death and destruction that people have faced. But I believe also we need to come to the understanding that Palestine is a region. It's not a people. If you really want to do your biblical history, you will go back and find that it was a punishment to the Jewish people by Roman Emperor Hadrian, and when he renamed the area from Judea to Syriac Palestina. So these are Arab individuals. They can go to any country that they want. The original two-state solution was Israel and Jordan, but President Trump is trying to give them an opportunity, a future. But Hamas cannot be part of that future.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Transjordan is what it was called back in the white paper in 1917, even in more recent. Colonel, I want you to tell us about the latest column you have at townhall.com. It's called Dastardly Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. You've got my attention.
Well, it's a little play off of the AC/DC song Dirty Deeds Done Cheap. You had Representative Al Green from Texas, who stood up and said that he was going to bring up articles of impeachment against President Trump for dastardly deeds. And we just really talk about the dastardly deeds of the previous administration and how the left does not want to see the president do his executive duties, which he is endowed and vested to do by the Constitution.
We should make a list of dastardly deeds and compare them. Be sure to listen to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. You really need to listen to that. Keep up with Colonel West online at Allen West. Great to see you today, Colonel, and thanks for always bringing your expertise.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir. All right, as we go today, there's a phone number that's on the bottom of the screen. It's always there, but we're always going to remind you of it. 877-281-6297. Let me say it again for those of you on radio. 877-281-6297. Right now, a licensed, trained prayer minister is ready to pray with you concerning anything going on in your life, your family, your workplace, whatever it is. They are trained and they are ready to minister to you, so make yourself available for it. Father, we thank you for this audience today. We call them blessed and highly favored in you. We give you praise for them in Jesus' name. Amen. Our thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, and especially you. Thanks for joining. We're back tomorrow at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, with no doubt about it, podcast host Mark Ronchetti and the Washington Examiner's Department of Justice reporter Ashley Oliver. Make sure you're here as well. The world reports the problem. Victory Channel brings the answer. Whatever is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that's overcome the world, our faith. So you stay in that faith, and we'll see you tomorrow, noon Eastern. Bye for now.